And what I'd like to draw your attention to on this slide is that there's lots of genes that cause atypical aHUS. And notice that at the very bottom, in some patients, in some persons, there are multiple genetic causes. So there are multiple hits. And so what that tells our lab as a human genetics lab is that this is a complex disease. And if it's a complex disease, then we'll devote more resources to studying it, and we like the challenge of studying it, and we have the ability to study it. I draw your attention also to the deletions that can be associated with the disease. The deletion of a couple of genes called complement factor H related 3 and complement factor H related 1. That's not a bad thing. There's several people in this room who carry only one copy of those two genes each instead of the normal 2 copies. And 3% of the population in the United States, every 30th person you walked by yesterday when you left the restaurant has no copies of those 2 genes. So that's just kind of a normal variation. Some of us have brown hair, some of us have no hair, some of us have blonde hair. It's just kind of the way it is. But what we do know is in patients with atypical aHUS, the number of people with no copies of those 2 genes is actually more than we would expect by chance. It's about 15%. And so that's something that's interesting to us in terms of trying to figure it out. And it's associated with autoantibodies to factor H many times, and I'll show you a picture of that later on. Lastly, I draw your attention to this. In 45%, and this is data from 144 patients with atypical aHUS studied in the United States, the largest series in the United States, one of the largest series in the world. In 44% of those patients, we didn't find anything. So does that mean that there isn't anything? Well, when you look at the other side, that wasn't very many genes that we looked at. Each of us has 20,000 genes, and we looked at 6 or 7. Well, is it surprising that in 45% of people we didn't find anything? It means that we need to do a better job at our end to explain the genetics so that we can then do a better job for clinicians and for patients and their families to understand the genetic makeup of the disease, because that gives us a better handle on what's happening.